I'm Rachel Fine. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and specialist in basically all things dancer health, wellness, and quote unquote healthy eating. My platform, To The Pointe Nutrition, you can go over and follow me at To The Pointe Nutrition, but my platform is called The Healthy Dancer, and it's all about teaching dancers how to fuel for performance, but do so in a way that means we're not omitting our favorite foods, because there's no doubt that in the dance world, we experience a lot of pressure when it comes to our body types. And it's really just been my mission for nearly a decade already to break down those barriers and make sure that dancers can understand that fueling for performance is very important. But what's even more important is making sure we're supporting a strong mind, supporting our mental health, and food plays a huge role in that, especially when it comes to incorporating all foods, all foods that we love throughout our days, throughout our weeks, and just in general, not obsessing about quote unquote healthy eating, or something that I'm actually talking about on my blog this week, which is quote unquote clean eating. I'm sure you've all heard of, these different phrases around food. Now today, for this fun, short and sweet little live, I'm going to be talking about the idea of breaking food rules. So breaking food rules, this is actually one of the first steps that I work on with the dancers who work with me in the Healthy Dancer community. And what we do is first identify what food rules even are, restrictions in place upon how we are eating throughout the day. So this might look like, I'm not allowing myself to eat any one type of food because I've heard maybe it's just not good for performance or it's not good for health. When we place these very rigid structures or rules around our food choices, we tend to fall into very unsustainable habits that don't support us long term. And this is in general because dieting as a form of food restriction and even over-exercising never works long term. Okay, just that's human biology. And for the purpose of this live, I'm not going to get too much into those details. But if you do want to learn more about it, then you should definitely head over to my blog, dancenutrition.com, because I dive into these topics pretty much weekly. But aside from that, just to get back to what we're talking about today, which is identifying food rules and then breaking food rules. So as I was saying before, food rules are these subtle, or maybe even not so subtle, restrictions that we place on our food choices, telling ourselves that we shouldn't eat XYZ, and so forth. Now, the thing is, in our culture, wherever you are, honestly, I should say in diet culture as it is, which is all over the world, food rules can be very devious and sometimes hard to identify, because it is very normal within our culture, whether it's dance culture, whether it's diet culture, for us to think of certain foods as being quote unquote healthier than other foods. Now, there's no doubt that more nourishing for performance than other foods, but if we fall into restrictive behaviors over certain foods, we're just going to deepen our desire for the foods that we think we can't have, right? And that's where we come into this idea of cravings. Again, really, that's another topic for another day. But the whole purpose is for us to really identify and decipher between restrictive food rules. And that's what we're focusing on today. So I just want to give you my 2 favorite quick tips about how you can start the work of breaking your food rules. So if you're saying to yourself right now, I don't think I have any food rules, but I try to choose, food XYZ over food ABC because it's quote unquote healthy, just reassess, make sure that you are never feeling restricted, whether it's like emotionally or socially, because of the rules that you're placing on your food choices. Now, the 2 tips that I want to go into today about actually breaking food rules. So let's say something I posted on my feed today was this food rule of only being able to eat dark chocolate because dark chocolate is quote unquote healthier, right? So when we fall into this all or nothing mindset over anything, it doesn't support us long term. So first, to go slowly. We want to go one at a time. So if you're sitting there and making a list, which I suggest you do, of a couple of rules that you might have in place on your food choices, maybe this is like eating at certain times, maybe this is, again, like I said earlier, choosing various foods over other foods, you want to make a list of potential food rules that you might have. And then you want to slowly go through the list. Now, this could mean breaking a food rule every week. It can actually be very overwhelming for dancers, and that's usually one of the reasons why I see a lot lot of dancers struggle with this idea of moving away from restrictive eating because they just get very overwhelmed by the idea of like breaking all these food rules or breaking all these restrictive habits in one day. So we really want to go slow. I just suggest picking one and maybe going through it on a weekly basis. I actually lead my followers through these Q&As that I do every Monday. And one of my favorite questions to ask is, well, what food freedom goal are you going to set for yourself for this upcoming week? It's not for this upcoming hour. It's not for this upcoming day. It's for the week. And by the way, you don't necessarily have to accomplish that goal in 1 week, right? Breaking food rules is actually a journey that could take our whole lives, right? Because we're constantly bombarded by messages from diet culture. So it's not like we necessarily solve a food rule, check it off our list and say good riddance. We're constantly reminding ourselves of how we can incorporate these various foods or foods that we might feel scared of or foods that we might feel guilty after eating. Those are, by the way, ways to identify what a food rule is. You know, if you're feeling fear, if you're feeling a lot of anxiety, if you're feeling a lot of guilt when eating or even the idea of eating that food, well, then that's a food rule. So we need to slowly reintroduce these foods back into your daily meal plan or weekly meal plan, whatever it might be. And again, if you want more specific guidance on that, highly recommend you just head over to dancenutrition.com, type in food rules, and I'll go through it with you. Little tip for today and for this live is to practice visualization. So visualization, you all might be familiar with this already. Before you head on stage, have you ever visualized yourself going through a choreography? As a dancer, I used to do this all the time when I was performing. Be in the wings, taking my space to go through the music, go through the emotions, go through the choreography. This process of visualization actually helps to rewire our brain and helps to reduce the anxiety that we might feel over the fact of reintroducing foods that are quote unquote triggering or fearful, or foods that we feel like we can't quote unquote trust ourselves around. So practicing visualization means that before you're actually even breaking that food rule, you're going to think about doing it. You're going to visualize yourself doing it. Visualize yourself, trying to eat that food, eating it in a way that's maybe mindful, experiencing the different flavors, the taste, the aromas, and so forth. Maybe even jotting some of this down in a journal. This is another exercise I do with a lot of the dancers in the Healthy Dancer program. So journaling the mindful eating experience can be very helpful throughout this process of breaking food rules, and doing it before you're actually eating the food, practicing this idea of visualization, just like you do on stage, or I should say before getting on stage. Do it when you're breaking your food rules, because this will just help to lessen that overall anxiety that you might feel. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed these 2 quick tips about breaking food rules. Just to summarize it, the first is do it one at a time. Don't overwhelm yourself with saying, I'm going to reintroduce all of these foods all at once. And yeah, you're probably going to feel a little bit overwhelmed. One at a time, maybe set a goal with one a week, one every other week. Also, working with a licensed professional, such as a registered dietitian nutritionist, can be super helpful for this process. Going through it alone can actually be really difficult. So I highly recommend that if you need more help, reach out to a registered dietitian like myself. Follow me at To The Pointe Nutrition. Check out my blog, dancenutrition.com.